potentially we'll have a chance to have more integrated discussion after seeing all the presentations. The next presenter is Jesse Souki, who is the Director of the State Office of Planning. The State Office of Planning is responsible for coordinating statewide land use and ocean planning and policy. Before joining the state, Mr. Souki served as the Deputy Corporation Counsel for the County of Maui and the City of County of Honolulu. He was also a senior associate with the law firm Imanaka, Kudo, and Fujimoto. Mr. Souki has advised public and private clients on litigation and regulatory matters related to land use, environmental, and planning law. In his spare time, he maintains a legal blog at hillenuse.blogspot.com. He has an MA in political science from the University of Hawaii with a focus in alternative futures and a JD from the Seattle University School of Law. Jesse?
Thank you for having me. I hope that what I talk about will be helpful. What I'm focusing on is from a management stewardship perspective. And the approach that we took through the Office of Planning, working with numerous state, county, federal, and community organizations and supporters, was developing a policy and framework for applying the data and science received about climate adaptation. Because without a policy, a framework, data, what do you do with it? How do you apply it? How do you make the decisions that you need to make to be resilient to climate change? So Hawaii has a legislative history with climate change. In 2007, there was Act 234, which talked about primarily greenhouse gas emissions. It looked at climate change, in my opinion, has the mitigation side of it, where we deal with the greenhouse gases, and the adaptation side of it, where we deal with the impacts that we're going to have, no matter what we do about mitigation. And so the legislature focused in 2007 on that mitigation side of it, greenhouse gas emissions. And then in 2009, it passed Act 20, and part of Act 20 was creating a task force that looked at adaptation. Unfortunately, it wasn't funded and it didn't move forward. And then in 2010, there was the barrel tax, and that was supposed to fund the greenhouse gas emissions task force and the climate change task force, but that never happened for one reason or the other. And I'm going through this quickly because Samantha says I have 5 minutes, but the presentation will be available. So what we did was go forward with creating a statewide climate adaptation policy, and in doing this, we held a visioning workshop in 2011. It was an alternative futures approach, which I think fit well with considering climate change because it's a future-oriented, scenario-based type thought project. It was a 2-day workshop. We had about 60 stakeholders that we selected from county, state, and federal decision makers, and also the community, and we had some representation from the business sector as well. We also had a representative from the insurance industry, which was good to have because the insurance industry has actually been looking at impacts from climate change for a while. What they're figuring out is how they incorporate that into their decision making as insurance providers. We looked at 4 different future scenarios, and this work was done with the help of the futures group at the University of Hawaii and Jim Dater. They put on a great workshop. And what we did was, with that, is develop priority guidelines, which became the basis for the policy that was adopted by the state legislature. So I'm going to go quickly through the guidelines that were adopted. So basically, these are it. It's ensuring Hawaii's people are educated and informed about climate change, encouraging community stewardship, investing in continued monitoring and research, considering Native Hawaiian traditional knowledge and practices in planning for the impacts of climate change, encouraging the preservation and restoration of natural landscape features to make us more resilient to climate change impacts, exploring adaptation strategies to moderate harm or exploit beneficial opportunities, promoting sector resilience, such as in the sectors of roads, water, airports, public health, fostering cross-jurisdictional collaboration, which is really important because it's not under the purview of one government entity, but all governments to deal with climate change. Integrating new information and strategies as an ongoing effort. and encouraging integrating climate into existing policy and regulations. So these 11 priority guidelines, as I said, was adopted by the legislature in 2011 and signed into law by the governor. And so how does it work? Where does it end up? And this is how it works. It's part of the statewide planning system. And our statewide planning system has three parts. There's a section in there that has the overall theme, goals, and objectives and policies, which are very broad, and priority guidelines. This is where the climate adaptation priority guideline is nested. And we have a statewide planning system that implements the plan. And this is probably the most important part of the State Planning Act, is the implementation. And people are always coming to me and saying, we need new climate policy, we need new sea level rise policy, we need new legislation. But actually, you know what we really need? Investment in a plan that we already have for dealing with planning in the state, land use in the state, and climate adaptation, which is part of this. So what we really should be asking out of our legislature is, give us more money to implement. So these are the general themes under the part one, and the priority guidelines, which include economic, population, education, sustainability, which is one that we also helped pass, and then climate change. So who implements? It's implemented through state functional plans, general plans by the county, zoning, special management area permits, district boundary amendments, and state programs, CIP decisions, coastal zone management decisions, which all state and county agencies need to consider, our Land Use Commission and our Board of Land and Natural Resources, which makes a lot of land use decisions. For my office specifically, we deal with two regular HRS chapters where we implement the climate adaptation policy. One is Chapter 205, which is our land use law. The mechanisms that we use to implement this climate adaptation that we're working on now is our 5-year boundary review, which we are beginning to work on, which we look at all boundaries in the state at the state level. If you're not familiar with Hawaii land use system, we have basically state zoning, 4 districts, and then county zoning within that. District boundary amendments, which are changing of these 4 boundaries from urban to ag or conservation, and we look at the impacts of climate change and making our recommendations to the Commission, important agricultural lands, and state special use permits. The other implementation statute that our office is involved in is the Coastal Zone Management Act. And there are a couple implementing mechanisms, including special management area permits for all development within the special management area. That includes shoreline setback, which is a part of that analysis. And so we have an opportunity to look at the impact of climate change as far as sea level rise is concerned, federal consistency review of federal projects, comprehensive planning and coordination work that we do, and also our Ocean Resources Management Plan, which was recently adopted, which coordinates a statewide ocean and coastal planning effort for the state of Hawaii. And part of that updated Ocean Resources Management Plan are 11 management priorities with goals, objectives, and metrics for delivering, which the state agencies who were involved signed and endorsed. Federal agencies also, they can't sign, federal agencies, but they said, yes, this is a good plan. And so they lended the logos for us. And we had 2 of the management priorities. One deals with appropriate coastal development, and the other deals with management of coastal hazards, which are other ways of stating, in my opinion, climate adaptation. And so these are another mechanism through our Ocean Resources Management Plan for dealing with climate change. But coastal and ocean and land use, it's not only with the Office of Planning. Other agencies in the state are also looking at integrating the policy and climate adaptation. So here's a couple of things that other state agencies are doing as well that we track. Office of Oahu Metropolitan Planning Organization did their transportation assessment, climate change risk assessment, and that will guide how the state develops federally funded projects in the transportation area. Department of Land and Natural Resources has the Rainfalls to Forest Plan, and I've read somewhere that planting 1 tree is the best type of adaptation you can do for preserving potable water than any other measure you can take. That was interesting. So that's a great thing that DLNR is doing for our water and making us more resilient. We also have some other projects there that you can look at on our slide. And although I was told to stop 5 minutes ago. I'm stopping down. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse.